Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth, joined by Aiden Moore.
Great to be
Today
here.
we got a little bit more of I don't know if it'll be a shorter episode, but we got more of a shorter agenda than usual. So we obviously got national championship to talk about, four divisional NFL games to talk about, some college basketball, and then we'll round it out with some MMA and maybe a little soccer if we have time. If I can get my act together on that. So all right. Growing up a Notre Dame fan, I'm gonna let you start off with the national championship. Your thoughts, your takeaways, just kind of everything.
I'm heartbroken. Uh, it was a valiant effort. It was a great fight from Notre Dame. Ohio State just jumped ahead uh, too quickly for the Irish. There was a good comeback effort led by Riley Leonard. I'm not gonna lie. There was a lot of aspects of his game where he suffered in this game, but he was just a great leader. But in the end, Ohio State took the win. Um, there was just a couple questionable calls that on coaching wise that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about. But overall, this is a very great Notre Dame team. As a Notre Dame fan, I'm very optimistic for the future. I hate always saying there's always next year, but with this team, with this coaching staff, and like the ability to recruit, I truly do believe that Notre Dame can make another great run next year. Um, Overall, the Ohio State defense was just absolutely pressing it on Notre Dame early. Like, yes, Notre Dame did what I think they needed to do in the first quarter. So they took a very long time to score that first touchdown. Believe it was like a 9-minute drive, just really wearing down the Ohio State defense, just power run. A lot of designed runs using Riley Leonard, which I think that's the best way to utilize him. He's not the best at like long to like medium range passer, but he's amazing when it comes to running. And they really utilized that in the first quarter. But then after that, I believe like Ohio State went on to score like 28 unanswered points, and it was looking like it was going to be another blowout coming like in the third quarter, with Ohio State scoring on their first drive in the second half. But then Notre Dame kind of got their stuff together. They eventually scored another touchdown, got the 2-point conversion, keep composure. That's when the defense really started amping it up and really like get pressing Howard. And it looked like the defense finally understood and like kind of was like locking in. But then there were a couple questionable calls. Like in the fourth quarter, there was like a fourth and short. Notre Dame decided to kick, going for the safe points. They would have still been down two scores. It was a two-score game. They still would have been down two scores if they got that field goal. So, but they went for the field goal, and then they missed the field goal, and that's just a really devastating blow. But the defense was still holding pretty strong. Notre Dame was able to like rebound, get another touchdown and 2-point conversion. A lot of like one of their 2-point conversions they utilized Love into it, which I liked because they weren't necessarily utilizing him that much, especially in the second half when it was like crunch time. But they got the stop, they got the touchdown. It's a one-score game, but then like the moment that will live in infamy, it's third and long. Notre Dame sends the house, trying to pressure Howard, and Howard just stays cool, throws an absolute dime, 56-yard catch, basically to ice the game and kick a field goal to keep it out of reach. Overall, very solid Ohio State team. They deserve to be the national champions. They beat, I believe I've seen a statistic, they beat like 8 of the top like 10 teams, the final top 10 teams in the nation. And they went through the gauntlet. I had questions about them. I had questions about Ryan Day and his coaching, but he really held the Ohio State team to the fire. They and molded a perfect playoff run. Like out of the chaos that was that Michigan game, they forged a beautiful run that's going to be remembered for many years now. Absolute hats off to Ohio State. Well played game, and I'm just as a Notre Dame fan, I'm a little bit saddened, but I'm still optimistic. It's a great future for the Irish right now. I don't have that same feeling that I felt back in like 2012, 2013 when we just absolutely got annihilated by Alabama in the national championship game. This was a national championship game they deserved to be in, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for the Irish for years to come.
I agree. It was well played, and they did kind of come out with the they came out with what I thought they needed to do. I think Ohio State's earlier two losses, I think Notre Dame really kind of looked to those for a blueprint on how to essentially hang in there with Ohio State. I do think that the Oregon game isn't necessarily as good of a kind of an indicator on how to beat Ohio State, because that was obviously just kind of like a shootout. And like if you're trying to get into a shootout with Ohio State, like that's not going to end well. There are teams that I definitely think could keep up with Ohio State in a shootout, not beat them, but like teams that could keep up in a shootout. But I think Notre Dame, essentially, they look to the Michigan game for inspiration. They look to the Texas game. You know, how you slow down Ohio State's offense is essentially you play bend, don't break defense. And I know a lot of older folks, particularly talking to my dad and grandfather watching football games, they're not a big fan of bend, don't break defense. But against Ohio State, that's just what you had to play. And that's, for most of the game, that's what Notre Dame played. They changed what they were comfortable with to kind of stay in that game. They're one of the best man coverage teams in the nation. They run the most man coverage and are the best at it as well. Like they give up the least amount of yards while playing man coverage, other than more, or they give up less than any other team, which I think that's not only just a testament to how good their DC is, but to how like the amount of talent they have on that defense, and if they're able to retain and reload that talent. And they did what they needed to do. And I think the big deciding moment in that game was in critical moments. Notre Dame would go to man coverage, which I can understand. You know, in critical moments, like, you know, games on the line, not even just that one pass you're talking about down the sideline, but there were other critical third and longs where they went to man. And I know that seems like the wrong decision because hindsight's 2020, but I think if you put yourself, at least not necessarily you, but if like other Notre Dame fans who I guess were critical of this put themselves in Marcus Freeman's shoes, you know, think about it like this. You know, it's a critical moment in the game. I know you changed your game plan for Ohio State, but what do you go to on those critical third downs? Something that you're the master of, and like, you know, you're the best team in the nation at this. Why not lean on it? And I know, like, you know, Jeremiah Smith is like this freak of nature. But I think even in man coverage, they kind of were able to hold him in check a lot better than other teams do. Because I know there's been memes about, oh, you know, Jeremiah Smith and man coverage, you just throw that. That's not what I saw in that game. I mean, yeah, there are some times where he beat the man coverage, but like, it was times where the man coverage was tight. Particularly, there was one third and long where there was some sort of comeback route where he almost didn't catch the ball. And usually, you know, you think comeback routes against man coverage, if you run them well, oh man, that's just like, to give you like, I guess, another Big East basketball reference. I know it's going to sound weird. Barbecue chicken. It's Tyler Kolek video. Look it up. But I think Notre Dame did what they had to do, and I think it just came down to those kind of plays where it was like they ended up having to play to Ohio State's strength in those big moments. They had, you know, take the risk, send the house, play Jeremiah Smith one-on-one. And I think what made me realize this game also made me realize that Notre Dame is better than I thought they were. When it came down to crunch time, when they needed to score quickly towards the end of the game, they were kind of able to do that. And I got to give my hats off to them because I did not think they'd be able to score quickly, particularly with how that first couple of drives went. And granted, you know, Ohio State has an explosive offense. What do you want to do? You want to play keep away. Like that's any sport. If some team has an explosive, quick offense, you play keep away. You know, if you're going up against a team that, you know, has a fast-paced three-point shooting or is really good in transition, offense, and basketball, you play Dean Smith's four corners or some variation of Dean Smith's four corners. You know, you just hold the ball, you look for good looks, you try and score, you play like a Tony Bennett style offense, you hold the ball. Soccer, if you play against a faster, stronger team, the U.S. used this in the 2014 World Cup to essentially hang in there with Germany. They played keep away. They didn't even try and score. They played keep away. And they didn't try and score until they absolutely needed it. They played keep away. And I think that's just what Notre Dame did. And Keep away was also kind of their game for the season. It was, a very physical, in your face run game, supplemented by short to medium passes, not necessarily deep to medium, but short to medium passes. But, hats off to Ohio State. Like you said, I had doubts as well. Even after that Penn State game, I still was kind of like, I don't know. These guys look shaky. Like, I'm not entirely convinced. But I will say, for as much crap as everyone gave the 12-team playoff, you and I think, predicted this perfectly. It all worked itself out.
Yeah.
It all worked itself out. What happened was meant to happen. Like, what I will say is Aiden and I are going to have this conversation later, possibly in the summer when we have less to talk about. Seeing as we've had an 8 seed win a 12-team playoff, just kind of have a retrospect look back at past national championships in both seasons, like thinking of, other non-top 4 or back to the BCS era, what other non-top 2 seed teams could have won a national championship over the teams that did. That'll definitely be an interesting conversation. Aiden and I will have a later date, just kind of, just a fun thought experiment that Aiden and I came up with the other night. So other than that, I mean, both teams kind of took care of the football very well in that game, which is kind of what, I thought was good. It was a nice, clean game. It was defensive. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of physical run games, so I enjoyed that game, especially on Notre Dame's side of the ball. And I just think it came down to a few moments. Like, I know there were memes at halftime about it being a blowout, but honestly, I didn't think the score at that point was reflective. And obviously, Notre Dame came back and showed that they deserved to be there, and like they are definitely the second best team in the nation, in my opinion. I know some people in the final rankings put them as low as 6. I don't think that's the case. They were the only team that came close to Ohio State. Like Texas, yeah, the score was close, but if you actually watch that game, Texas got ran through. So hats off to Notre Dame. I definitely think they earned everything they got this season. And just even being able to kind of regroup after that NIU loss, that takes great. I don't know many teams that could do that. I don't know many coaches that could remotivate their team. I certainly don't think Brian Kelly could have done that. I mean, look at LSU. I mean, he left for LSU to win national championships, and which team's been to a New Year's Six Bowl and which team hasn't since he left? And which team's been to a national championship since he's left too? So,
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, nothing else to add. We could probably do breakdowns of just the entire season sometime in the future. But overall, I really enjoyed this college football season. There was a lot of madness, a lot of chaos, upsets galore. I think this is going to be one of those legendary years that you're always going to remember. So here's to the 2024-2025 college football season. And I can't wait to see what's going to go down next year.
I can't wait either. I'd say that's the craziest season since the 2007 season where they had that BCS controversy. I think we had one of those type of seasons, maybe not with the controversy, but with just like the amount of upsets that went down. Just we had a similar type of year where it was like 2007. I think it was like the number 2 team in the nation lost like 3 weeks in a row or something like that. So we had definitely that level of craziness this season. So like I said, great season, ups and downs. It made Aiden and I particularly happy with how our teams did. No, but we'll get to that. Trust me, we'll get there.
I'm
that
happy for the future.
But no. All right, moving on. We've got there's a lot to kind of depending on how you look at, there's either a lot or a little to unpack here when it comes to these divisional games. For a few of the games, I think there's a simple answer. Some of them I don't think there is. So it really depends. Do you want to go in order of,
Yeah, let's go in order. We're starting off with Kansas City versus the Texans. Kansas City got the solid win against the Texans. Patrick Mahomes didn't light up the scoreboard at all, only throwing for 177 yards, 1 touchdown, but he did what he needed to do. Kareem Hunt able to get a rushing touchdown. Overall, just a dominant win by the Kansas City Chiefs. Really able to kind of pull it all together in that fourth quarter. Things were kind of looking a little, I wouldn't say too shaky, but Texans were able to bring it to like a 12-13 game. You were thinking, oh, wins with CJ Stroud throwing for so many yards. You were going to figure like he was probably going to throw a touchdown, but that never happened. And eventually, the Chiefs were able to just kind of win convincingly, getting a solid 10 points right before the end of the game, and really just pulling away for a solid Kansas City Chiefs win. Overall, Kansas City solid. I'm excited to see what they do in this next game, but we're gonna break that down a little bit in the future. But Gareth, what are your takeaways from this?
It was a good game, low scoring game. I think the big difference here, because both teams played phenomenal, they played basically mistake free football from a turnover standpoint, which cannot be said for some of the other playoff games. A lot of we'll get into this more this later, but the key to a lot of these playoff games, the divisional round, even the wild card round, has been turnovers. A lot of teams making a lot of early exits with several multiple turnover games. But I think what this game basically boiled down to was the sacks. CJ Stroud got sacked 8 times for almost 60 yards. You can't really have that, especially when your defense is only sacking Patrick Mahomes 3 times. Sacks, I saw some stat that every sack you take in a game or on a drive decreases your chance of a touchdown by 7%. Now, I don't know if I forget whether some of those happened on the same drive. I know at least 2 of them did. But it was like there's some other thing where it decreases your chance. Every sack you give up decreases your chances of winning by so much, and it's not like a straight scale. It's like a exponential scale for each sack you give up past 0. So 8 sacks in the game. I can't really think of a team that's won giving up 8 sacks in the game, let alone 5's usually pretty bad. There was a time that unrelated. There was a state game I was listening to when I was little, and our quarterback got sacked for a 5th time. And we hadn't been listening to the game, and my dad goes, "Oh, we're getting our ass beat. We're 100% getting our ass beat if he's been sacked for the 5th time and it's not even halftime." That we were up 28-0. But still, that's not the standard. That's not what usually happens. You usually can't out battle a giving up 5 sacks. Your O-line's getting cooked at that point if you're giving up 5 sacks. So I think, like I said, the sacks were just kind of a big deal. I mean, the Texans they're big. They were able to get Joe Mixon going, so that was good. That was kind of. I know we didn't talk about it last time, but my kind of key to the game for them was just get the run game going, take the pressure off of Stroud and that offensive line. But obviously, as we can see, even getting Joe Mixon going really didn't take that pressure off that offensive line. It was kind of rough sailing, and I know they made it. They kept it close. They kept it respectable. They hung in with the Chiefs. I mean, I honestly don't think Arrowhead is as of an imposing atmosphere as people make it out to be. I mean, it was called Burrowhead for the longest time. So, obviously, I mean, Chiefs know how to win. I'll give them that. The Chiefs know how to win. So, they can find ways to win, and that's ultimately what makes them dangerous. They aren't as dominant as they have been in the past, but I think that's just kind of it. And one thing that I saw, I think if teams want to beat the Chiefs, I can address this further for the Bills game. But someone was set, bro. I forget who it was. I saw it. It was I forget who it was. I think it might have actually been Joe Ovius and Joe Giglio. We like to shout them out a lot on here. They helped us start this podcast, so they shouted them. They've been a major help getting this podcast up and going. Another Raleigh sports group. We aspire to be like them. So
we're taking your jobs.
One thing I think that I forget whether I saw this clip on Instagram or their TikTok, but I think it was them that said this, that they think the issue with teams trying to beat Kansas City is they think they're playing the Kansas City of a few seasons ago, and they focus on trying to have a perfect game rather than just playing football their way and figuring out how to play football their way. They try to play what they think would be a perfect game. And when they get behind schedule, they just kind of shut down, whether that be, behind the chains, they get behind the 8 ball. They're a little they get down by more than a score, or they get off their game plan.
Yeah.
And I agree. I'll get more into that for the Bills game, but I think that's why I think the Bills are the perfect team to beat them. Is the Bills? I'll explain later what I mean, but I
Yeah.
think the Bills are the team to do it. But like I said, obviously it was a good game. It was fun to watch. I missed most of it. I forget what I was doing, but I missed most of it. Most of the time when I'm missing an NFL game and don't realize it, I'm just like sitting waiting for it to start, and then I realize it started like 2 hours ago, and I'm like, well, shit. I missed it. Or I think that, I think it's a 4:15 game and it's a 1 o'clock game, and I'm like, well, that was a fail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
moving
Well,
on, honestly, I think the most you're gonna do the most shocking. Well, this is the next one, but this is honestly a shocking result to me. I don't know about you,
yeah,
but
it's
this is
also
probably
the next chronological game that happened. We got the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions. I am astonished, but overall, great performance by the Commanders. Man, the Commanders are hot right now, and I am all on Jaden Daniels hype train, and I've been on the Jaden Daniels hype train. Don't y'all forget. I was saying he was MVP back in like week number 4, and I believe he is having the best rookie season we have ever seen of all time. This man has basically grabbed the Commanders, and I'm not going to say it's just him, but the Commanders have been pulled out of irrelevance. And Jaden Daniels has just been leading this team with fire, with passion, and with conviction. Throwing for almost 300 yards. He settled at a nice 299, 2 touchdowns. The run game was solid. We got Bijan Robinson Jr. He rushed for Brian Robinson Jr. He rushed for a solid 2 touchdowns. And there was also a defensive interception turned into a pick six. That kind of leads me into Jared Goff. Just there's good Goff, there's bad Goff. We had good and bad Goff in this game. He threw for 313 yards. He has the numbers, but he had 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. And this goes into Garrett's point. Interceptions and turnovers have been the theme of what really knocks down these higher seeds in these games. Um, the upset usually happens with these monumental plays, and the Commanders were able to capitalize and able to turn these mistakes into points. And overall, it was definitely a shootout, 45-31 going in the way of the Commanders. But I'm disappointed in the Lions. I thought they would have shown up a little bit better. I expected more out of Jared Goff. I think he's a great quarterback, and I do think he has done a lot to help with the Lions right now. But right now, I'm almost at the point of, do you need to move on from Goff right now? He might have pulled it. He might have done his job right now, and you might be hitting a cap right now because there are narratives that are going to rise. I'm not sure if I'm going to be adhering to them, but is Goff a playoff quarterback that the Lions can rely on? And with this game and last year in particular, I'm starting to see maybe the Lions are starting to have a little bit of fault. They definitely are a very physical and amazing team, offensively speaking, and defensively speaking, they're great. They didn't show up this game, but they're great and they're physical. But there's just going to be narratives going into the offseason of are the Lions playoff ready? And I think that's going to be a real question that Dan Campbell needs to assess when he's looking at his roster come next season.
Yeah, I think you said it. For me, the difference was turnovers. Obviously, the Lions' defense being as battered as it is didn't stand a chance against this Commanders' offense. I kind of foresaw this being a shootout unless the Lions decide to play it the way of just the power run game. But the Lions decided they wanted to let it become a shootout. But I think that became like it had to be a shootout by necessity with how many turnovers just that offense had. I mean, Goff with 3 picks, and I forget who had a fumble as well in there. But when you turn the ball over 4 times, you're not going to win games. They're lucky they weren't down by more. Yeah, it's just they could move. It's one of those games where it's like they could move the ball, but the problem is they'd make mistakes with it. I think it was excuse me, it wasn't a fumble. It was they ran some end around trick play where the receiver threw a pick. I think that's what it was. But I mean, Lions monumental historic season. Congrats. I know it's sad, and I know some of these teams, some of the Lions fans are kind of dreading it because they are losing both their coordinators. But you have a solid roster, and obviously these coordinators have great people under them. I mean, in order for a team to be as good as the Lions are, you kind of have to be good top to bottom. Like, you can't just mask it with a good coach or a good coordinator. So there's definitely good position coaches beneath there who definitely know what they're talking about. So the Lions fans who think about this in kind of a gloom and doom scenario, you may not have as good of a season next year while you're kind of, the new staff you hire is trying to find themselves. But I do think that the future is still bright for the Lions. And I know it hurts. You were a Super Bowl favorite at this point. You were kind of this is kind of, oxymoron. You were kind of America's one seed, which, that's not usually America's team usually isn't a one seed, but you were America's one seed. People wanted you to do well. So obviously, I mean, hats off to the Commanders. They played one hell of a game. I curious to see who can stop the Commanders is my thing. Because man, I am excited to see him against this Eagles defense because Eagles Commanders this season has been it's been a fun watch. So we're in for a real treat this weekend for Eagles Commanders. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely, but going into the other NFC matchup this week, we had the LA Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This was just, well, first off, wonderful snow game. Loved the atmosphere of the game. Like, it was snowing, and you needed some hard-nosed football, and this game delivered. Saquon Barkley rushing for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was player of the game. And this game pretty much boiled down to who was the more physical team. Matthew Stafford was able to come away with 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played phenomenally, but that's not what this game required. This game required some hard-nosed football and some physical plays in this environment. And that's what Saquon Barkley did and delivered. Kyren Williams, I love Kyren Williams, former Notre Dame player. He always has a place in my heart. But just unfortunate. He had one turnover, one fumble that really stuck out to me, and that really kind of like solidified the game for me. The Eagles were mainly just able to capitalize with field goals and one Saquon Barkley 78-yard rush, but that's kind of what really propelled the Eagles forward. It was just a good, solid physical win, and Matthew Stafford, though his best efforts, just wasn't able to drag the Rams to victory. But any takeaways, Garrett?
It was definitely a solid game played by both teams. I mean, there were definitely some mistakes made on both sides of the ball, and I think this is kind of just like a death by 1,000 cuts type of matchup where it was like both teams were either giving up or doing things that would usually lead you to lose games. I mean, Rams gave up 5 sacks. Eagles, now that I said this, Eagles are the first team I've seen give up 7 sacks and win. So I think that may have just been due to the nature of like the weather game. Sacks are more common in weather games just because quarterbacks are afraid to make mistakes. They don't want to call, especially in those with the snow, it would be also wet and cold. They don't want to give the ball up. So, they better just, lose 7 yards here instead of lose the possession. So, but like I said, I think it was just, both teams, their rushing game was phenomenal. Saquon Barkley running for 8 yards a carry, but from the flip side on the Rams perspective, if you're giving up 8 yards a carry on the ground, do you really expect to win? Like, you're basically giving them a first down every other play.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the Kyren Williams fumble, but one turnover. You can't really nag a team for one turnover. Well, excuse me, they had 2 turnovers. Stafford had 1, Kyren Williams had 1. So I think the Rams, they just made a few more mistakes than the Eagles. It's just kind of, even Kyren Williams was getting 5 yards a carry, which for the Eagles defense, that's not a recipe for success either. But just with the nature of the game being slippery in a weather game, the running games are going to be amped up. You're going to lean on it more. You're going to put more effort into it. So But like I said, I think it's just the Eagles made one less mistake or a little bit fewer mistakes. I mean, like I said, weather game, you're going to have mistakes, but I think it's just the Eagles were able to make less mistakes. And I think that's just kind of what kind of did it. That dominant offensive line, Saquon Barkley being a dominant runner, Hurts even himself getting 10 yards a carry. I just think that Philadelphia offensive line is really hard to beat right now. I really thought that offensive line was going to take a hit after Jason Kelce left, but they've hit the ground running. I'm not going to say they're better, but they've definitely reloaded. They've definitely reloaded with this new group and have learned how to play together. So I'm excited to see what they do against the Commanders, kind of almost similar to the Lions, but the Lions can, like Aiden and I talked about, the Lions can do both finesse and power. I'm curious to see how this Eagles offense kind of shapes up against this Commanders offense, kind of, finesse versus like actual straight up power. This Eagles offense reminds me a lot of the Notre Dame offense. It's centered around power running. Hurts can throw the deep ball, but, you've got a running quarterback, very physical. Hurts is a passer, but I honestly, from what I've seen and, watching Hurts over his career, I don't want to say a run-first quarterback, but in short yardage, your first instinct is to run him and not pass him. So that's why I think of him as a running quarterback. So I think even against the Commanders, regardless of weather, we're going to see a lot of hard-nosed football out of the Eagles. So, and it's working for them. So hats off to them. I mean, Rams played a great game. Rams came out of that weird NFC West conference, NFC West division. That was kind of a crapshoot. Games were all over the place. There was no real clear leader of that group until of that division to the last couple weeks. So it's kind of a wild card. They came out, they played their butts off. They played a lot better than I thought they were. So hats off to them. I mean, that Rams team under Sean McVay is always, even if he doesn't necessarily have the star-studded talent, they will be a formidable foe. So McVay can do a lot with a little. So hats off to them, but Eagles are deservedly on to the NFC Championship game. Next matchup we will be looking at is the final one is Bills-Ravens. Again, turnovers.
Absolutely.
The name of the game here. I know people, so you probably have seen. So the story of this game, at least for the Ravens offense, is their two tight ends. A story of triumph and a story of defeat. Mm-hmm. Their tight end, kind of their more, vertical threat tight end, Isaiah Likely, 4 catches, 73 yards, that huge touchdown catch to what would have been the tying score had their other tight end, Mark Andrews, not dropped it. So, turnovers. Lamar, 1 interception. Not the worst thing in the world. I don't think the Bills scored off that, if I'm being honest. The biggest one for me is Mark Andrews. So, I believe it was either second long, third long. Lamar, beautiful ball to Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews catches on and he fumbles it away. That was at a crucial point in the game where momentum was starting to tip towards the Bills. And that's one you're going to need back. And then obviously the big one that you've probably seen at the end of the game, 2-point play to tie it. Ravens drop this beautiful play. Mark Andrews is wide open in the flat. Like, one of my favorite football content creators calls it booty butt cheeks naked, wide open. He was naked in terms of wide open. And similar to that Auburn Texas A&M game, just drops the ball. Just overthinks it, slips, drops the ball. I know there was some snow on the ground, so that probably led to him slipping, but still, you got to catch that, man. And I know people make mistakes. I'm not ripping him. I'm obviously not one of those loads of Baltimore fans who've been flocking with death threats, which, that's something you never want to see in sports. It's like, at the end of the day, it's, to quote Roy Kent from Ted Lasso, and excuse my language, it's a fucking game.
Indeed.
It's a fucking game. Yes, it's his job, but at the end of the day, this is a game you played on the playground with your homies at recess. Mm-hmm. It's a game. So, and I get, this Baltimore, they're frustrated with Lamar Jackson, but there's no excuse for that. But still, obviously still a great played game by both teams, I think. The biggest thing for me was how well the Ravens defense held Josh Allen in check. Josh Allen 16 of 22 for 127 passing yards. But the story of the day would be them not being able to keep Josh Allen's rushing in check. You know, you don't really think of him as a runner, but if you look back at Josh Allen tapes from college, he's a scrambling quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not like your Lamar Jackson type who's like juking people out. No, he's your Cam Newton scrambling type. He's going to run you over. He's going to run through your face.
Yeah.
And yeah, he only had 20 yards, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, James Cook got it going on the grounds for 67 yards, 17 carries. Still, you know, that's still 4 yards carry, which is still decent. But what made really surprise me was just, I mean, I know the Ravens have had a great defense all season, but just their ability to keep Josh Allen in check in the passing game. The Ravens defense played the game they needed to have in order to win that. It was just the offense let them down with turnovers, drops, miscues. And obviously on the Bills, and you did what you needed to do to get it done. You know, you forced fumbles. Von Miller and Terrell Berard both forced fumbles. So it was good. You know, just Buffalo played mistake-free football. And essentially, the postseason in any sport is just mistake-free play.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't turn the ball over? And how well can you limit empty possessions, whether it be football, soccer, basketball? Postseason's all about not necessarily are you great, are you flashy, do you play the perfect game? It's not even about being perfect. It's just, do you take care of the ball and do you do what you have to do?
Yeah.
And ultimately, for the Ravens and for the Lions, they didn't take care of the ball. Their offense still did phenomenal. They could move the ball at will. It was just they didn't take care of the ball, you know. And I'm not going to sit here and say they were careless and they weren't thinking about taking care of the ball, but you've just got to take care of the ball in moments like that. And I get weather games going to be hard to take care of the ball, but, you know, you got to do it. The Bills found out a way to do it, so.
Yeah.
Here's how ball security is going to play. I know I'm saying this like it's a weather forecast, but I'm curious to see kind of how these NFC and AFC championship games go with the amount. I feel like we've seen an unprecedented amount of turnovers this postseason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do some research on that for the next episode, just kind of see. But I feel like we've had an inordinate amount of turnovers this season. You know, Herbert throwing 4 picks, Goff throwing 3. You know, Lamar turning it over twice. Mark Andrews with the fumble. Just kind of, I'm just curious because I feel like we've just had a lot of turnovers this postseason. So I don't know what you think. That's just, I'm curious to see how that plays out in the championship games.
Wait, yeah, that's for me when I'm looking at this game. Obviously, great game by Buffalo. I want to bring up a couple different points. Number one, I don't want to put this game all on Mark Andrews. Let's be real. 1 minute, like 30 seconds left. If he catches that 2-point conversion, there is more than enough time for the Bills to get a field goal in that time frame. I think Buffalo was dead. Buffalo was going to win this game, in my opinion, and that boils down to the fact that I think one thing that stuck out to me wasn't the turnovers; it was the snapping, like the snaps in this game. I just when I look back in my memory when I was watching this game, there was always like, oh, low snap for Lamar, high snap, or losing a snap that led to a fumble, or just like being uneasy in the pocket. I feel like that also played a big role. I feel like number one, ball security is the number one thing on the that led the Ravens to defeat in this one. 3 turnovers, you can't make an excuse for that. I don't think Lamar is the reason why they lost this game. I don't think there is a single particular player you can ever put a game on and say that's their fault. In my opinion, though, I think if I'm looking at this as a Ravens fan, if I'm a Ravens fan, and I'm saying, okay, obviously Lamar is the guy. I don't like these narratives that he's not like playoff ready. He plays good playoff football, and I believe he has the same playoff record at this point in his career as Peyton Manning did. There's still tons of time with Lamar. I think he is destined to get his ring in the future. Obviously not now,
100%.
but he's going to get a ring eventually. He's a very like he's still very young. Like as far as quarterbacks go, he entered the league at a very young age, so I definitely see him getting a ring in the future. But it's just these mistakes that are very costly. I don't think you can pin them on Lamar. I don't think you can pin them on Mark Andrews. But as a team and as a unit, things need to clean up so you can go into these games and not worry about these little menial like mistakes. Because if you're going in worrying about mistakes, I don't care if you're Jackson, I don't care if you're Andrews, I don't care if you're the freaking kicker. If you're going in, Justin Tucker, but if you're going in, shout out the GOAT, but if you're going in just worried about, okay, how am I going to make up for a mistake that my teammate made, you're destined to lose. And I feel like that's the real lesson that needs to be learned from this if the Ravens are looking to win the Super Bowl in the future. How do we mitigate these little mistakes? Not cut corners. I'm not claiming anyone's cutting corners, but I'm saying in these mistakes, it's going to give off the appearance that corners have been cut. And you can't cut corners when you're cutting for a Super Bowl. That's the one thing you got to stay in the lines on. When you're cutting out an arts and crafts project, if you make a little like wrong cut, it's going to look bad. And right now it looks bad for the Ravens, but if you stay clean, precise, make the right cuts when you need to, that's when you're going to get your Super Bowl. And that's my main takeaway from this game.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to pin it all on either. I was just saying, like, it's the like you said, it's the culmination of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the straw that broke the camel's back. It's all the straw that's on the camel's back.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing. Like, if you could pin a loss, if you just did one thing wrong during a game, you probably didn't lose.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously, still not a bad game. I mean, it's still a weather game. You're playing against basically on what would be if it wasn't for the Chiefs, the number 1 seed, and like they are the far and away 2 seed. Now, granted, I think Baltimore was a close third, definitely close third seed, but like we said, let's see. I do think they'll get a ring, particularly if they can keep Henry for at least another year. Like, I'm surprised that duo didn't win a Super Bowl, so maybe they'll get some more weapons around them. The focus on not necessarily like hyper fixating on the mistakes, but just I think it's similar to the point that we're probably going to bring up in this Bills Chiefs game. You just got to go out there and play. You just got to go out there and play. You can't fixate on those mistakes. You just got to go out there and play. Yeah. With that, do you want to move on to the championship games?
Yes.
Do you want to start with AFC or NFC?
Let's start with NFC. Let's start with NFC as it's the first game on the slate. We got the Eagles versus Commanders. The Commanders are hot right now. I can't deny that, and I might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I know they're going to be. It's a road game, and it's going to be a physical run attack from Philadelphia, but I got faith in Jaden Daniels. I do. I think he can pull the team together. I think if the Commanders show up on defense with an answer to Saquon Barkley, I think they can come away with this win, and I'm just confident in the Commanders. The thing that's tipping me is the fact that Jalen Hurts has been playing injured the past couple games. Like, he's had a pretty bad knee, and he hasn't been utilized as much as we might like to see him utilize. And since he's such a valued asset, and I don't think he's at 100%, I think he's going to play, but I don't think he's playing at 100%. I feel like that's going to be the deciding factor for me. I got the Commanders winning this game.
I definitely see a world in which both teams win or can have a path to winning. I think for both teams, obviously, it's mistake-free football. That's first and foremost is essentially by mistake-free, I mean turnover-free. or at least limiting the turnovers. That's my big thing, is limiting the turnovers, because I think this playoffs more than ever, you've seen that turnovers really kill teams. Sacks have really killed teams. I mean, not necessarily the Eagles in their last game, but they're a general trend that sacks and interceptions and turnovers kill teams. That's true for all of football. Preaching the choir here, but like, you're just gonna have to play a clean game, not worry about the mistakes. I'm curious to see. I mean, Jaden Daniels has handled the pressure immensely. Like, he's done. He has not looked like a rookie out there. That's what I'm saying. He has not looked like a rookie. I'm curious to see how the Commanders plan to stop the Eagles on offense, particularly with how proficient Barkley is behind that line. I've got the Eagles, but I do see a way in which the Commanders would win. I just don't know how they'd scheme it up on defense. I'm sure some defensive coordinator in a basement somewhere, snorting his pre-workout, probably has a good idea of how to stop their offense. Because, and I know for as much shit as people like to give Jalen Hurts about his deep ball, he's got a decent deep ball for a running quarterback. And he's got a decent deep ball for even a quarterback, not just a running quarterback. And he's worked on it. And that's something people have talked about, is his deep balls this season have been a lot better. They've been more accurate. They've been on the money. But with how good his rushing attack's been, that Philadelphia rushing attack is, he hasn't had to take that many deep shots. So I'm curious to see kind of how the Commanders play this kind of, particularly this Eagles offense, coming off of like such a physical game where Hurts had 70 yards, Barkley had over 200. So there's a lot of ways that this Eagles offense could attack this Commanders defense, but also the same could be said about the Commanders offense. It can come from Daniels passing. It can come from him running. It can come from the running back who has solid games. I forget who's their running back, but it can come from their running back. It can come from any angle with these teams. I just think that Philadelphia home field advantage, which I know home field advantage isn't as big of a deal in the NFL, at least sometimes in terms of a crowd perspective, but it just depends on how like the stadium is. But I've got the Eagles here, but it would not surprise me if the Commanders somehow pull this off. And by somehow, I don't mean it's like a no chance, but I'm trying to think of ways that essentially, for the Commanders to win, I think they've got to force Jalen Hurts to turn the ball over. They're going to have to force interceptions. Saquon doesn't fumble that often. They're going to have to force a fumble somewhere. They're going to have to. I think their best chance is forcing an interception and getting the Eagles into third and longs and forcing him. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is a bad thrower. He's not. He throws a really pretty ball. He can pick people out. He's accurate. But I think you're going to have to get him in these third and longs where Saquon's off the table, where the Jalen Hurts run game's off the table. And I know on third and long, he can just take off and scramble, or they can run a draw. But no, I think the key for the Commanders here is get him in the third and longs, and then on those third and longs, have a spy on Hurts and play coverage. Maybe dial up a little pressure, but still have a spy so you don't break contain. I think that's my keys. I've got the Eagles, though, but I think if the Commanders are able to do that, they stay sound on offense, they keep moving the ball, they keep scoring, they don't turn it over, but then are able to force mistakes, out of the Eagles, or even not even just force mistakes, but get the Eagles into third and longs, get them to punt the ball, get them to not have the ball, play keep away. And I know the Commanders' offense is, more explosive, and there's a lot of big plays, so keep away isn't necessarily their style of play. Their style of play is points. But if they're able to capitalize off essentially not necessarily mistakes, but keeping Philadelphia out of the end zone, say they force a 3-and-out, or they have a few drives where Philadelphia doesn't score, they're going to have to capitalize off that. I'm not saying they have to have a perfect game, because I think that's where a lot of teams, like we quoted Joe Ovius and Joe Giglio, that's where a lot of teams get into trouble, is they try to play the perfect game too hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they just play, they play smart football, they can play smart football. This will be a game with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So,
Yep.
But I got the Eagles.
That'll take. But that brings us into Kansas City versus the Buffalo Bills battle for the AFC Championship game. I'm going back and forth on this matchup, I'm going to be honest. Part of me believes that Buffalo finally has all the tools, the stars have aligned for them to finally slay the dragon that is Kansas City. But I'm not going to lie. Just the way Kansas City operates. They've been operating in the playoffs. They are a force to be reckoned with. Too many teams have tried to play them perfect, and that's where they get you. That says something when it speaks volumes when a team that's having an off year is a number one seed, is 15-2, and going in to try to fight for their their third Super Bowl, trying to complete a three-peat. That speaks volumes in my mind. But the faults still do show. This offense isn't as explosive as it's been, and there's just Kansas City has been led by their defense this year more than they have been led by their offense this year, and that scares a lot of people. Well, that makes people also think that Kansas City is more beatable because, this isn't the year that Kansas City's lining it up every single year, so that must be the reason why they can lose this year. Well, they haven't lost that much, and they've continued to win and are rolling. But if there's any team that can stop this team, it will be Buffalo. Regardless, I don't think the Eagles can stop Kansas City. I don't think the Commanders can stop Kansas City. The winner of this, to me, decides the Super Bowl. Spoiler alert. With that being said, I like Josh Allen. I like his physical run capabilities. And I like his arm. He's been lighting it up this year in the passing game, throwing for over 3,700 yards. But Patrick Mahomes also still on an off year. He's been lighting it up, throwing for 3,922 yards. I'm going back and forth on who I think is going to win this one. But in the end, I think Buffalo has the stronger run and a equivalent pass game. If Buffalo can address this Kansas City defense and light up the scoreboard, I don't think Kansas City is going to be able to keep up. So with that, I think Buffalo is going to take this, and I think we're going to be seeing Buffalo going into the Super Bowl.
I definitely agree with you. I think the biggest step up from previous Mahomes, Josh Allen matchups is the defense. The last time we saw these two meet in 2020, it was an offensive shootout. I think 4 touchdowns were scored in the final 60 seconds.
Yeah.
This time, Chiefs are led by their defense. The Bills aren't led by their defense, but they've got a solid defense. Just like you said, I've got the Bills as well. I think this Bills offense is a lot more balanced than previous Bills offenses. They can hit you from a lot of different angles. It's not just this explosive, voracious, unrelenting passing attack that we've seen in the past. You've got the Josh Allen run games brought into it. You've got the James Cook run game. You've got their toss sweep game. You've got their jet pop pass. They can run sweeps and all sorts of stuff to their wide receivers. They can get it done. They can run it down your throat. They can get under center. They can ground and pound. They can do whatever. They can air it out. I think the Bills have got this. I think Kansas City's finally going to meet their match. And it's not necessarily explosive teams that have beaten Kansas City this year who have come close. It is, even if it's teams that have come close, it's, teams like the Broncos. The Broncos they don't light you up necessarily on the stat sheet. They just play fundamentally. When they play, they usually, unlike they did in their game against Buffalo, play fundamentally sound football. They usually play fundamentally sound football. And I think the Bills are a team that plays fundamentally sound football. And I think I think the Bills are going to get them because of that.
And it's an interesting fact. I mean, the only team that has beaten Kansas City while all the starters are playing has been the Buffalo Bills. The Broncos did beat the Kansas City, but that was the last game of the regular season, and they were resting most of their starters. So interesting tidbit.
Yeah, and I will say the key in that matchup, I think, was not only the Buffalo offense, but it was they were able to force mistakes out of Mahomes, and Mahomes has been a lot more mistake prone this season. They forced 2 interceptions out of Mahomes, which, that revamped Buffalo defense working its wonders there. And I think it was just the Bills were able to get things going in all facets. I mean, Josh Allen, 260 yards passing, 55 yards rushing. Like I said, that Josh Allen run game is getting opened up. Big key there. They got who else? I forget what else happened in the game. James Cook necessarily didn't get going, but they weren't able to get their run game going, but they were getting sweeps to Ty Johnson. They were getting other runs to Ray Davis. They were getting their receivers involved in the run game. It was the key to beating Kansas City is you don't necessarily have to play the perfect game. You have to play true to yourself, but also be flexible in playing true to yourself. You have to be flexible. Like I said, when I kind of elaborate upon that point from OG Sports' that's, the name of their podcast, the OG Sports' point, I think to add on to there, you have to be flexible. When things don't go right, you have to be okay. You don't throw your plan away completely, but you pivot it. You kind of look at a case-by-case basis. You play almost like a diagnosing style offense, okay? Instead of going, we're a running team, or, but the Kansas City really struggles with this, we should do this. No. Just make informed decisions based on what you're good at and what Kansas City struggles with. Don't completely change yourself for them, and don't completely get so stuck in your dogma. I think there's a balance to strike when beating Kansas City, and I think that's the Bills' offense. The Bills have beaten teams airing it out this year, like the Bills' offenses of the early of 2020 and 2021. They've pounded you into a pulp with the run game with James Cook. They've burned people using Josh Allen in the run game. There's so many opportunities here, and they've got so many weapons. They've got Khalil Shakir. I forget if Curtis Samuel's out hurt. No, they've got Curtis Samuel. Who else? They've got Dawson Knox, Hollins, Amari Cooper. They've got loaded receivers. They've got talented running backs. So they got Josh Allen. And I just think Buffalo also has the weapons. Kansas City has several key injuries as well. I forget. What's the receiver they're missing? I know it's some big name, and it's like stupid that I'm even forgetting who it is. It's like bad. It's not Rashi. Oh, it is Rashi Rice, who should be in jail, but we're not going to go there. But taken after Henry Ruggs. But with that being said, I think the Bills get this one 27-19. I just think I know I said Kansas City doesn't have the best home field advantage, but I think that home field advantage slows down the Bills a little bit. But I got the Bills 27-19. I just think the big difference here is the Bills are going to be able to finish drives, and they may force a few mistakes out of Mahomes. So that's my take on it. So for me, Super Bowl is going to be Bills-Eagles. Battle of the unhinged fan bases.
I got, obviously, Bills-Commanders.
Obviously, Aiden's is the safer option because in my world, neither of those cities are prepared for a loss in the Super Bowl. Neither of those cities are prepared for a loss or a win. So
Buffalo's prepared for a loss. They always lose.
Yeah, but with how crazy their fans are, I just think, God forbid anything controversial happened in that Super Bowl between Bills and Eagles. To quote Heath Ledger's Joker, if anything controversial happens, people will die. People will die. If someone wins that game, people will die.
A war between upstate New York and central and east Pennsylvania.
Yeah, people will die. So, anything else to add about the NFL?
No. I think that's it.
All right, moving on to college basketball. Kind of sore subject for both of us right now in all facets.
Mm-hmm.
For State, Providence, Carolina, Notre Dame, kind of a sore subject right now for all of our teams. I I will say State and Carolina are looking a fair bit brighter than Providence and Notre Dame are. Like they at
Yeah,
least look like capable basketball teams.
yeah.
But only thing what I'll say about NC State is the frustrating thing, and I guess I asked for this, is a lot of people are complaining about Kevin Keats' play call. He's scheming wide open shots. We're just not finishing. But the issue is the games where we can't scheme wide open shots. For me, that's the biggest issue. Is if you scheme wide open shots, I know the old adage is if you're taking good shots and they're not falling, they eventually will. But, if they're still not falling, like at some point, do you just say maybe we shouldn't be taking these shots? They're clearly not our shots. But my biggest pet peeve with these wide open shots is they're these beautiful in rhythm threes that could be real momentum changers, and they just break. Like I'm talking, they toilet bowl out, they hit rim. It's not even like they're airballing. They're on frame. They look good. They're decent looks, and they're good efforts. But I realize, obviously in basketball, it's about getting the ball in the hoop. So,
Yeah.
but that's all I'll say about NC State. We just need a shooter, and our end of game shot selection needs to be better. It's just obviously Carolina game's Carolina game. It's a rivalry game. It's going to be close. It's going to be hot contested. Mistakes are going to be made. I'll give them that. The Virginia Tech game, like, come the fuck on. 17 points. Okay, I know that technical foul was controversial. I know there was controversial calls in that last minute, but we shouldn't have even been in that position. Like, let's be real. We had a 15-point lead with like 11 minutes to go. We shouldn't have been in that position. And I know story of the year, Virginia Tech, we've had leads and teams all of a sudden turn into Steph Curry from three. I get that, but at some point, consider stepping out and guarding the three-point line. I know the analytics say let them shoot, particularly for teams like Virginia Tech. The analytics say let them shoot. The teams like Virginia, the analytics say let them shoot. Maybe consider stepping out there a little bit, just saying. But obviously, State's got ample chances. I think they're going to have to win the conference tournament if they want to make March Madness. But mathematically speaking, that's not the case. If they're able to get catch fire in conference, not necessarily go on a miracle run. We know if they're able to start just winning games and winning, they're going to have to win tough games and games they're not supposed to win now. Like they can't just hold serve, which that's usually how State makes tournaments. They hold serve, but they're going to have to win at Duke. They're going to have to win at Louisville. They're going to have to beat Louisville at home again. They're going to have to beat Wake at home. They're going to have to beat Clemson at home. We're going to have to go 5 for 5 in those games, which, it's possible. We have won in Cameron Indoor in recent memory. In down years, we were god-awful that season, and we won in Cameron Indoor. It's been done before. It's possible. Am I saying it's plausible? No, but it's been crazier things have happened. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying we're going to make the tournament. I don't think we are. But crazier things have happened, as we saw last year. So, what about you? What's your takeaway with Carolina so far as of late?
Carolina has been on a 2-game slide lately and just losing in some very, very close games. First, the loss to Stanford, that was a tough one. Stanford kind of caught fire near the end, and they proved that they're pretty valuable when it comes to being in the ACC. When it comes to the Stanford Carolina game, one thing that kind of like sticks out to me when looking at the analytics, it's just obviously rebounds again. UNC unable to really get substantial offensive and defensive rebounds, which really cost them near the end of the game. It was just overall like a pretty kind of tough thing to watch because like Stanford kind of got the go-ahead shot at the end. Defense kind of fell apart. There was only like 0.9, 1 point, like 2 seconds left on the clock after Stanford drove down the court and got that clutch game winner shot. That was really tough to see. Just really disappointed, like how the defense just didn't really kind of press him or create like chaos to really stop them, which I thought was kind of disappointing. But what I'm mainly focusing on right now, because I can like lead the Stanford game as just a tough loss, but now I'm starting to notice a little bit of a trend. Wake Forest got the win over UNC. I was saying before, Wake Forest is a like pretty dangerous team that needs to be looked out and like really monitored because they have gotten like they were getting points in the paint, being able to like slam it down UNC by creating like different plays and really moving the ball around. I was really disappointed in the field goal percentage of UNC. They just weren't making the shots that they needed to make, and it really showed. Wake Forest had like a 15-0 run mid-game. It was looking like it was getting away from the Tar Heels, but they were able to rally back. But just letting Wake Forest get ahead and then you playing catch up for the rest of the game is obviously going to be pretty pretty hard to combat. And that's kind of the key to success for this game, for this Wake Forest team. They're able to create those runs and really like launch themselves ahead, as we've seen in the state game. Your team comes crawling back, and then what do? They go on another run. They are able to just turn it on instantly. And in the end, UNC was able to make it close with like foul shots, but near like the final minute, I was already saying like it was kind of over. Like it was a miracle that UNC was able to like kind of bring it that close. But honestly, in my opinion, the scoreboard's a little bit better than what the actual game was, in my opinion, personally. But yeah, that's just kind of my takeaways from these past two UNC games. I'm still optimistic if we can create more momentum. I think we really need to get our shots off more. Once they hit, they really hit, and that's going to be the key to success with this really small team. That we can't win being physical. Like we kind of proved that. We're able to get decent rebounds, but usually we're getting out rebounded, and that's going to be kind of the dagger when it comes to UNC. It's just we're not as big and physical, and we need to account for that. And I think as conference play develops, I think these shots are going to land, and I'm still very optimistic for UNC being able to start turning these unfortunate losses into monumental wins.
Yeah. One thing you reminded me of with State, and I will say this about UNC, you guys have two great opportunities, not only quad one wins, but top AP top 5 opportunities, 2 in the next month.
Yeah.
You've got 2 games against Duke.
Yeah.
And Shire has not been great against UNC. So we'll see. One thing you reminded me of with close losses. So NC State currently has 9 losses. Not great. But what pisses me off, what really gets my blood boiling about these losses, Aiden, how many do you think are by 2 points or less of the 9? It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's more than half. 6 out of our 9 losses are by 2 points or less.
Eesh.
I was talking about how the KenPom has a luck rating. You know who has the lowest fucking luck rating on the KenPom?
Who?
State. That means you're missing wide open shots you don't normally miss. Teams play above their average against you. And it factors in a whole bunch of stuff like, do teams play above their average? Do teams shoot above their average? Opposition 3-point shooting is a big factor in the luck thing that we're getting.
Yeah.
This is the most frustrated I've been with the State team, not from a not good enough standpoint, but from a like, bro, even if some of those went another way, we go from being nowhere near the bubble to possibly near the bubble. even if we win half of those, we're sitting at 12-6, and 12-6 for this point in the year, not a bad record. Most tournament teams at this point in the year, most tournament teams who are not a top seed are about 12-6, 11-7. And I realize State is just 2 games off of that, but like 6 one-possession losses. Texas, Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia. I'm missing some, but it just goes on and on. I know, blowout to Wake Forest, that's a rivalry game on the road, you know. You don't really win road rivalry games in college basketball too often. So it really depends. You're lucky to get a road conference win anyway, but obviously that's that. That's all I'll say. Providence, do I really want to go there? Providence, heartbreaking loss against Villanova. Aiden and I both watched that game. Aiden might have some thoughts. I don't know. I got a lot of texts from Aiden going, really? You've got to be joking. Bro threw it all the way there. It was a great game played by Providence until the last 5 seconds where they had 3 opportunities to win the game. And what did they do? Jaden Pierre threw the ball out of bounds, but luckily it didn't actually go out of bounds, so we got the ball back. On the inbound, we threw it away, but luckily a Villanova player stupidly caught it and stepped out. And then we schemed up a shot to our power forward from behind the arc. I love Kim English. I love in a rivalry game, he's like, no, I'm not going for the tie. I'm going for the dagger. I'm going for the 3. I'm going to put this game beyond reach. We're hurt. Our best player's hurt. We're battered. Got guys in foul trouble. Go for the throat. Go for the jugular. But to our power forward, to Eli Delorier, really? Okay, I couldn't. Maybe Rich Barron, okay? Yes, he's a forward, but he can at least – there's historical precedent in there. Rich Barron can get hot from 3. For a small forward, Rich Barron's a big small forward. He's built like a power forward, but dude can knock down threes. He's like a budget Eric Dixon, the big guy, the actual 7-footer on Villanova that can shoot threes. And he's not a stretch 5. He's a muscular 7-foot. But okay, if you're scheming that for Rich Barron, okay. Yes, was Rich Barron hurt? I know. But that's what I'm saying. If you're going to scheme it to a forward, scheme it to Rich Barron. Don't scheme it to Eli Delorier, who's a liability at best. Like, nice guy. I've met the dude. No shade to him. I've met the dude. Good guy. 3-point shooting is not your strength. I'm sorry. I get you were the one who got the ball and you had to put the ball up. I'm not blaming you for shooting. There was 1.3. You had no time. And they stupidly threw you the ball. I get it. You had to put a shot up. I'm not knocking you. I'm knocking the knucklehead who say, let's fucking throw it to Delorier. All right? Let me put my teammate in a situation where he's probably not going to succeed. That's not on you. But obviously their season's not over. They can win the Big East title. Big East, per usual, outside of the top seed in Marquette's a crapshoot right now. Everyone's neck and neck. So, I don't know. Providence kind of looking to the future. I know I can't really blame Kim English. He thought he was going to have a player back, and he schemed an entire offense around that. And this is the second year in a row Kim English has had to completely revamp his offense because of injuries. And I know injuries are a recurring thing, but we didn't expect Bryce Hopkins to get re-injured when he came back. So, or at least that's what they're saying now, is it's not that he's holding out, it's that he got re-injured. So, can't blame him for sitting out. Obviously, Kim English. In my mind, I know some fans want him gone, but I think he earns himself another year. 2 out of his first 2 years, his best player's been on the injury reserve, and he's had to essentially rework his offense midseason. So, no shade to Kim English. You know, you've been dealt a horrible hand. I can let scheming a 3 to Eli Delorier go. You know, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel right now. So that's all I'll say. Anything else you want to add besides, bro, what is he doing?
Not to that game, but I do have a couple of takeaways that I kind of want to bring up before I get into MMA. First off, I want to give up a formal apology to the Tennessee Volunteers. They've been on a roll lately, and they have truly bounced back from their Florida loss, getting a solid win against a pretty solid Texas team. A win against Georgia that did numbers. They did lose against Vanderbilt, but tonight they had a very solid win against Mississippi State. Really kind of tearing it up, like offensively speaking. Uh, Field goal percentage pretty good, and I'm excited to see them go up against Florida and Florida again for that matchup. I think they're going to show up a little bit better. But this weekend they're going to be playing at Auburn. I'm having that game on watch right now. That's a game you need to watch this weekend. Watch Tennessee versus Auburn. They're going into Auburn. I think this is going to be a very good, uh, not a make or break, but it's going to show what this Tennessee team's really made of. I think they show off well against top 25 teams, showed off well against Georgia, showed off well against Mississippi State. Can they pull it off against Auburn? That's going to be an interesting game that I definitely want to see. Going into other aspects, today, we had a pretty major upset in college basketball. We had Ohio State take down the Purdue Boilermakers. That I did not see that coming. Uh, Ohio State able to come back from being down 41 25, just being able to light it up in the second half and really mount a substantial comeback, scoring 45 points in that second half. They absolutely put on a clinic shooting wise, were able to get points in the paint, and upset a very good Purdue Boilermakers team. I have Ohio State on watch right now. I think they're going to be, if they make it into the tournament, well, I want to see them in Big Ten play because they've been iffy when it comes to conference play. They're 3-5 right now, but if they're able to amount wins like this, I want to keep them on watch. And for Purdue, they might be a little bit on fraudulent watch right now. Losing in this manner to Ohio State is definitely
At home.
going at home. That's going to be a little bit embarrassing. I want to see how they bounce back from this. I still have faith in this Purdue Boilermakers team, but there's just so many questions. I don't know how you let up a halftime lead that big in your own stadium. That's just something that I want to see. But other than that, some other notable college basketball games going on tonight. In particular, we had Texas take down Mizzou. This Texas team, I'm telling y'all, you got to look out for them. They're a good win to have. Like if you're able to win against them, I think you're a pretty solid team. But like Mizzou, you kind of got checked up by Texas a little bit. Arizona State able to get the win against West Virginia. That was another shocking game. Arizona State just able to really turn it up in the second half, scoring 41 points. This first half was pretty slow. Only like both teams were in the 20s. I was kind of checking in and out of this game, but Arizona State gets a solid win. This makes them 2-5 in conference play. West Virginia 4-3. The Big 12 is just up for grabs. I don't know what's going on in it. You got Arizona, you got Iowa State, you got teams that can upset you like Arizona State. You got hot and cold teams like West Virginia. I'm excited to see how conference play develops more for the Big 12, especially in this expanded conference. And I'm excited to see how conference tournament goes for the Big 12. That's what I'm watching, and that's just kind of my general overview of tonight in basketball.
I've got some things I'd like to say as well. One thing I'd like to point out about this Ohio State team, they've got bad losses, they've got great wins. This Ohio State team, This Ohio State team reminds me a lot of the Providence 2019-2020 squad, the one that was robbed their NCAA tournament. Rough start to the year, some horrible losses at home, lost to URI. We're sitting at 9-9 at Christmas, then went on an absolute tear, winning at top 10 teams on the road. Went from being not even considered for the NIT to being looked at for possibly a top 8 seed or above at 19 and 11. I see a lot of that team in this Ohio State team. This Ohio State team has some questionable losses at home, but also some like really riveting wins on the road. They've got wins against at number 11 Purdue. They won at number 4 Kentucky, and they beat at the time number 19 Texas at a neutral site. So, granted, they've also had some bad losses. They've got absolutely embarrassed by Auburn. They lost at home to Michigan State, and I know they weren't favored to win that, but that's a home conference game, and you've got to have those if you want to be considered a tournament team. Some other teams I have on watch, necessarily teams that I think are being slept on right now. Louisville again. They're getting some love in the AP poll, but I don't think they're high enough. Another, speak of it, red team that was relocated to a conference, St. John's. Criminally underrated right now. St. John's sitting at 15-3. I think they deserve that number 19 rank over UConn right now. I'm just saying. Another team to watch. The Santa Clara Broncos winning at Gonzaga. You just got Herb Sendek, baby. I'm saying the WCC for me is a 2-bid league, and it's not going to St. Mary's this year. It's going to Gonzaga and Santa freaking Clara. Santa Clara made I don't even know what it was. They made a program high percentage of their threes. In the second half, they went 10 for 15 from behind the arc to come back and beat Gonzaga on the road. I believe one of their players went 5 for 5 in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. I watched a little bit of that game on YouTube. That was a good one. Elsewhere, Creighton. People sleep on this Creighton team. This Creighton team won at UConn. This Creighton team also just beat a trendy DePaul team on the road by 30 today.
Don't sleep on DePaul.
This is a DePaul team Aiden and I are high on. And they got absolutely mollywopped by a Creighton team who's missing their best player. This Creighton team was supposed to be good. They got Pop Isaacs from Houston. But Pop Isaacs has spent most of the year hurt, and he's done for the season. But Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kalkbrenner get it done again. Even after missing bigger parts of their offense, like Baylor Shireman led the NCAA in three-point percentage last year. They're missing big parts, but Creighton can still get it done. Finally, they're not getting as much love as I think they deserve. Yes, they're our rival. Yes, they've absolutely embarrassed State this year. They've beaten Carolina. But Aiden, I think Wake Forest deserves a bigger shout-out than they're getting.
Yeah,
they're getting
definitely.
on. Wake Forest is still my pick to win the ACC. I think they'll beat Duke coming up in the next couple of weeks. Maybe they won't win in Cameron, but I definitely think they'll win in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
However, for me, teams that are overrated right now, UConn, I'm sorry. You almost just lost to Butler at home. You know who you almost lost to at home? Providence, who's also got a losing record. We suck, and we had a 15-point lead. Yeah, we blew it, but we had a 15-point lead on y'all in Gamble. You lost to Dayton. Dayton was a hot team. They're not hot anymore. Dayton's not looking too hot right now. Sitting at 11-6, which for mid-major is not great. Elsewhere, I know UCLA picked up a nice rank win over number 18 Wisconsin. UCLA's been hit or miss. I think they're on the downward trend. I think they're vastly overrated. West Virginia. Aiden brought up Arizona State. West Virginia, you just lost at home by 8 to Arizona State. Still a solid team. A Hurley-run team. Both Hurley brothers, phenomenal coaches. But like I said, you can't lose your home conference games. Especially as a ranked team, you can't lose your home conference games. Finally, one more team that I think is criminally overrated, and you're about to say, Gareth, this team is 16-3. But, okay, let's do a deep dive on who this team's lost to. Number 13, Oregon. I'm sorry. They're overrated at 16-3. You lose by 32 at home to number 22 Illinois. You lose 109-77. You get absolutely embarrassed. Not even a week later, Purdue, number 17 Purdue, comes into your house and embarrasses you again for the second time in a week. Double-digit loss. Now you're saying, Garrett, that could have just been a bad week. But you know what was in between all that? A home game against a rough-looking Maryland team. Granted, they are 11-6. Maryland's 11-6. I will give them that. They're solid. But you're the number 9 team in the nation at this time. You let them come within 4. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, this Oregon team for me, not it. They are on upset alert for me. They're overrated. Them, UConn. Let me think. I can't really think of another overrated team right now. But for me, teams that I've got, UConn and Oregon overrated. Teams that I've got an overrated watch right now. Purdue. Just Purdue. It's always Purdue. Elsewhere, teams I've got an overrated watch. Any SEC team right now. Any SEC team right now. I'm kidding. I'm playing. Auburn Tigers. The Auburn Tigers. Tennessee, you proved us wrong. I still am a little bit suspect. You're not quite an overrated watch, but I'll put you in the question. Tennessee, I'll put you in the question mark category. You've still proven yourself, but there's still been some question marks throughout the year. Auburn, you're not overrated yet, but I've got you on watch. Your schedule's been a little suspect, but hey, you don't always choose all your games on your schedule, so I can't blame you. I'm a big proponent of you play the cards you're dealt. And what's Auburn doing right now? They're playing the hand they're dealt. So I can't knock them. I just have questions. I'm not saying they're a bad team. I'm just saying it's something to keep an eye on, if you know what I mean. I'm not knocking them. Auburn's always a great basketball team, but it's just something I want to keep an eye on as we go down the stretch. And then, as always, URI. I'm sorry, Providence is ass this year. You got your one win, and have kind of been on a slide. So URI, you're overrated. Sorry, you're not winning the A10. That's going to Dayton. That's all I'll say about college basketball. You got any MMA for us?
Yes, I do. UFC 311 has wrapped up this weekend, and a lot of interesting headlines. First off, I want to apologize to all 3 of our fans who may have seen the analysis that I made, and I want to say by the time it was posted, it was not up to date because Armin and his headlining had to step back, and on a 1 day's notice, Renato Moicano stepped in and fought Islam Makhachev. How do you think that went? It was over in the first round by submission. I want to give kudos to Renato. He did put up a pretty good fight. I mean, he had some pretty good strikes in there, but was able to kind of make Islam a little bit wobbly. But overall, Islam just dominated and was able to choke out Renato, and that was pretty much the end of the fight. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what else I expected. I thought it would have been really funny. A lot of my MMA, when I get into the MMA world, I do it via TikTok, and during this fight, TikTok was in its 12-hour ban, and I would have thought, wouldn't it be really funny if all the MMA creators that I watch just were unable to post the day of the greatest upset that could have ever happened. Obviously, it didn't happen, but very solid win by Islam Makhachev, continuing his reign as lightweight champion. I'm interested to see where he goes from here. I give it probably one more fight in this year before he probably tries to move up, because I just see him absolutely clearing the division, and I think he's going to try to go for the super fight eventually. But if we're starting from the beginning of fights that I thought were interesting, first one that I want to say, Peyton Talbot. you got fraud checked, man. Like, Barcelos just absolutely put on a clinic against Peyton Talbot. Peyton Talbot, I really liked his striking. He has like great knockout potential, especially when it comes to the bantamweight. He hits heavy, but oh man, I did not like his grappling in this matchup. He just kind of absolutely got owned. A clear sweep with the unanimous decision. Two judges scoring it 27-30, and one judge saying that he scored only 26 points in the fight. I don't know which round like he would have like been penalized for that, but that's really really bad. I think Peyton Talbot. I still have hope for him in this division. I think he can definitely has a promising future in the UFC, but he needs to check his grappling and really improve on that aspect of his game. Speaking of needing to improve in grappling, Kevin Holland, man, I love you. I love you, man. I don't need to do this, but getting submitted in the first round, this isn't the first time that it's happened. Renier de Ryder is just put on another clinic when it came to grappling. Submitting Kevin Holland by a rear naked choke. That seems to be the choke that gets Kevin Holland a lot. That's what Khamzat Chimaev did to Kevin Holland. And I know he usually, like sometimes when it comes to getting rear naked choked, so like your opponent's on your back and you're basically kind of in a headlock. One way you kind of get out of it is by shooting your arm over, and so your opponent can't choke you out with your because basically how it works is if you're being choked out like this, imagine this is somebody else's arm. If you're being choked out like this, blood can't flow straight to your head. If you're able to put an arm in here or like really go through, you're not going to be getting that. You're still going to be getting that blood flow to your head, which is very necessary. Kevin Holland's able, like usually when he gets rear naked choke, like there's a couple times where it looks scary. He's able to like fit that through. And what he does, he like I saw in one fight, he like kind of fakes that he's getting choked out, but then like he makes a gesture to like the audience that, yo, I'm good, just to kind of get the crowd going. But he just gives up his back a lot when it comes to grappling, and that's something that he kind of needs to start working on if he wants to continue being the middleweight gatekeeper, which is the role I think he likes filling. I like him in middleweight a lot, but he will say this himself. He's not taking UFC too seriously. I think he just likes being an active fighter. Most fighters try to limit the amount of fights that they fight because they want to heal up. Kevin Holland takes the opposite approach. He loves trying to get as many fights as he can in 1 year. And whether he does good or bad, he really doesn't care. He kind of does it for the love of the game, which I respect him for. But if I were his coach, I would probably say, hey, we need to start working more on your back defense and grappling so we can get you into like more ideal situations for taking the win. But that's just a slight aside. Kevin Holland's always a fan favorite, so he's in the UFC to stay. But moving on to a light heavyweight bout that has major implications, Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. Yuri Prochazka was able to win by TKO against Jamal Hill. I love this for Yuri. But with this win comes the fact that there's not much you can do in the light heavyweight division except fight Alex Pereira. And Alex Pereira has already beat Yuri Prochazka twice. And Yuri Prochazka is trying to go for a trilogy. And you usually only go for trilogies if your opponent's won one, you won one, and you want to find that tiebreaker. It's just really a weird time to be in the light heavyweight division right now. If you have a beast like Alex Pereira who's going on a generational run right now. I don't think Yuri Prochazka is going to be fighting Alex Pereira. I think Alex Pereira might try to go for a money fight and go up to heavyweight and try to fight the winner of Tom Aspinall versus John Jones. But that just leaves a lot more to be decided. But going in to another title fight, well, the other title fight of the night, there was Islam Makhachev. That was the main title fight, but the first title fight that was fought was the bantamweight title fight versus Merab and Umar Nurmagomedov. Merab gets the unanimous decision, but the scorecards were kind of split in this. Merab, for two judges, it was said that Merab won 3 rounds. For one judge, it was said that Merab won 4 rounds. But overall, still a very dominant win for Merab. Just looking at the analytics, it was honestly a pretty good slugfest. Total strikes on both the fighters ranging in the hundreds. Merab landed 142 of 300 strikes, and Umar Nurmagomedov was able to land 113 of 250. Overall, control time was in favor of Merab, which is where I thought where the judges kind of gave him the decision win. Just looking at this, there wasn't as much time on the ground as I thought there would be. It was more of a slugfest, which is very interesting to see, especially with these fighters. Umar obviously is from Dagestan. Merab is from Georgia. These mountainous Eurasian areas tend to breed more grappling fighters, but this fight was kind of more of a slugfest than I expected. I thought it was going to be fought more on the ground, but Merab was able to take the win, continuing his reign as the bantamweight champion. I don't know where else Merab can go. I do know there's definitely got to be money in a Sean O'Malley rematch, but that's got to be seen. I don't know what the future of the bantamweight title is in the next coming fights, but definitely 2025 is shaping up to be an interesting year as it pertains to championship implications. I think this is going to be the year a lot of belts are moved, and I think there's going to be chaos in the pound per pound rankings. And that just pretty much sums up my analysis of UFC 311. UFC 312, which is coming in a couple weeks, is not shaping up to be that interesting of a card. But however, probably next week, I'm going to be talking about the UFC Fight Night that is going to be kind of leading up to UFC 312. This is going to be a very interesting fight night because we have Israel Adesanya on a fight night card, which is very interesting. Usually Israel Adesanya is a pay-per-view poll, but he's fighting in a fight night card. And next week I'm going to be dissecting that fight night card. I think it's going to be very interesting. Some good fights to be had, but I'm going to be going in, looking at the tape, seeing what we got, and anticipation for this fight night. And in a couple weeks, UFC 312, I think is going to be. I'm not necessarily too excited for UFC 312, but I think there's going to be some interesting fights, and the implications for the rest of this year are going to be insane. But that sums up my MMA analysis for today.
Yeah. I'll give a quick soccer update, seeing as we're only an hour and a half in. Aiden and I really kept it brief today. At least from a soccer standpoint, U.S. in the middle of January camp. Kind of known, January camp's not exactly eventful. So for those of you who don't know, there's an international break every couple months. But there's a United States camp, and the U.S. national team does play a couple games every month. Now, whether there's a full-on international break for that, But the whole reason it's known as the MLS camp in January is because the MLS players are the only ones who aren't in season right now. The European players, obviously, the European leagues, most leagues in the world run from September to May, but particularly a lot of American leagues. And this isn't just a U.S. thing, so don't be like, oh, these Americans. South America does this too. Some Northern European countries up near the Arctic Circle, like Sweden, does this as well. They play from spring to fall, whether it be for like weather or, I mean, obviously for Sweden and Norway, it's weather, although not all Norwegian leagues do that. Just some of them. I know Greenland plays that way. It's just how it kind of shook out in the U.S. And the U.S. kind of more modeled their soccer leagues off of like the South American model where they play like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm going to butcher what they say in Spanish to call it. But essentially, you play from spring to fall, or in Spanish, their words for it are opening to close. I'll just go for apertura and clausura. You play opening to close. The opening of the season with the life, and then the closing of it in the fall. I like that model. It's unique. It gives us sports in the fall, but it also gives us a unique international window where we have only MLS players playing. And the U.S. had a tough matchup for MLS only people. And not only that, MLS players that are not particularly well known. The U.S. took care of business against Venezuela, despite that, getting a 3-1 victory with scores including Charlotte FC's own Patrick Agyemang. Interesting story. Patrick Agyemang, 4 years ago, was playing Division III soccer, didn't have any looks from the U.S. national team, but has remodeled himself, got himself a spot on a MLS professional roster, and has finally earned his first U.S. national team call-up. So hats off to him. He's been a great striker for Charlotte FC. He's worked his tail off. He finally got his U.S. men's national team call-up. Happy for him. Got a debut goal as well. That is, getting your debut for the men's national team is a big goal. But for those of you in soccer, for those of you who don't know, in soccer, it's a big deal just to get your debut and start for a professional team or your national team. But it's an even bigger deal, and it's considered like, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that 4-leaf clover, getting a goal on your debut, and nonetheless a debut for your national team. That's huge for him. Other big names that were in the game, Jonathan Cremaschi, he's an up-and-coming star. He plays for Inter Miami, Benjamin Cremaschi. 19-year-old, plays for Inter Miami. Been getting some looks from Europe, but has decided to stay in the States for right now to play with Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, kind of learn under, not necessarily their tutelage as they're not the coach, but, take the opportunity to play with the GOATs while they're still playing. But Benjamin Cremaschi, decent game. Got a good 65 minutes out of him. Accurate passing, 58 touches, 2 touches in opposition box, 92% accurate passes. Really all you can ask for, especially from a 19-year-old. Other scorers include Philadelphia Union's Jack McGlynn, another youngster out there, 21 years young, played the whole 90 minutes, 1 goal, 1 assist, 97% accurate passes, went 86 to 89. MLS is on the come up, and I do give MLS a hard time, but some of these youngsters coming out of MLS are really getting work done. Another youngster who have a lot of people been critical of, I honestly haven't been paying much attention to him as he's been a free agent for most of this year, Matko Mihailovic. He was a free agent. He's had some decent appearances at places. He currently plays for Huracan in the Argentinian league. He's had some solid appearances. He scored against Boca Juniors the other week, the big perennial power in Argentinian soccer. But it's good to see him get a call-up. He got a goal as well. Also on the score sheet, Caden Clark, another one of the up-and-coming U.S. men's national team stars. 21-year-old, got an assist, plays for CF Montreal. Like I said, good showing for the U.S. against a strong, up-and-coming Venezuela squad. Venezuela, not the biggest power in world soccer, but they're kind of having a resurgence within their soccer team right now. They're at their highest ranking since before the pandemic, so solid win over a team that's trending upward. Seeing as it is past midnight, the U.S. rivalry game tonight. Not as big as Mexico, but we're playing against Costa Rica. We usually win this, but I will say we have lost on U.S. soil to Costa Rica, and it was embarrassing. They absolutely put BTA. Granted, that was a long time ago. That was under a different coaching staff. We got rid of that coaching staff. We've moved on since then. And I think the very next game we put 6 past them. Costa Rica, not as quite of a formidable squad as Venezuela, but like I said, Costa Rica, along with Mexico and Panama, are our big, regional rivals. Canada now kind of stepping into the limelight as well as another one of our rivals. But big game against Costa Rica. I'm curious to see who's going to get the start today out of the MLS players. I'm assuming it'll be something similar. But for me, what's going to sum up this kind of international kind of window is just kind of Mauricio Pochettino. He's really kind of done a 180 with this team. He's taking essentially not even our D team, our E team. He's taking not just MLS players, our MLS youngsters. He's taking teenagers out there and taking it to not only beating, but putting absolute BTA to trending teams, hot teams who are kind of on watch right now for a World Cup appearance. He is going out there and leaving no doubt on the field with teenagers. I can't imagine what he's going to do when we get our superstars in there. And I know you're saying, well, he got destroyed by Mexico with our superstars. He had 3 days of practice. He had just met the guys 3 days prior. So I'll give him that. But he's now gotten to the point where he had 6 months with this team, and I'm getting really excited. Like I said, if this is what he's doing with teenagers who don't even start in MLS, these are guys who are in academies. Some of them do start, like Benjamin Kremeshi, like Matko Milhailovic, George Bello, Shaq Moore, other solid MLS defenders. But if this is what he's doing with our E team, I'm just chomping at the bits for when we get our A team healthy. Not only healthy, but get them on the pitch because a lot of them are still hurt. Gio Reyna's kind of been in and out. Christian Pulisic's been on fire for AC Milan, but left the game the other day with an injury, not looking good. So hoping we can get him situated by the World Cup next year. He's got about 15 months. Still trying to get word on that injury. I think he's going to be okay. It didn't look too bad, but I can actually check on it now, see what the Milan put out this morning. I don't think Milan's put anything out, but I can check for us. Let me go to following Christian Pulisic. It's a calf injury. His expected return date is unknown, so that's fucking great. Our best player, but he wasn't. Hey, solid for Milan this year. In 16 matches, he's got 5 goals, 4 assists, so 9 contributions in 16 matches. That's pretty solid. So happy. Gio Reyna coming back from injury has 2 goals in the last month. Pretty solid. Ricardo Pepi, 10 goals in 17 matches, 2 assists, 12 contributions, 17 games. This squad, if we can get these guys healthy, I'm excited for next year. But the issue is, can we get them healthy? We've got the coach. We've got the tactical system. He's being able to implement it with teenagers, and they're kicking butt. It's just, can we get our stars healthy? That's going to be the big question of whether I think we make a deep run in the World Cup next summer is, can we get our big guns healthy? But, hey, sports is all about who can step up. So maybe we get some of these youngsters who've been phenomenal step up. I'm really excited about some of them, but that's all I'll say for soccer. I'll add Chelsea. I mean, we've been on a bit of a slide. We were in second. We've slid to fourth. Can't really finish games right now. I mean, we just picked up a nice win over Wolves, 3-1 on Monday. Solid play, but our issues is we've had these momentary lapses where we've let other teams score several goals in a small span. Our defense has been solid for like 88 of 90 minutes. It's just problems in these 2 minutes where we let 2 and 3 goals in, which you can't have those. It's like allowing a 10-0 run in basketball. Like, you can't do it. So that's really all I'll say with Chelsea. Excited about the U.S. men's national team. Still solid season for Chelsea, but anything else you want to talk about today? Or you want to call it the episode?
I think we're good.
So that'll do it from us. You'll hear from us next week. Possibly looking forward to Super Bowl. Individual season reviews for State and Carolina football coming up as well. Probably just an overall season award show. We're going to have to get on those.
Yes.
On those, but we'll have some funny awards. We're not just gonna do like corny stuff like MVP. Like Aiden said, CTE award, Jameis Winston award. We're gonna have a whole show. We'll do an award show for college basketball when that season wraps up too. Are we gonna have separate awards for NFL and college, or are they just gonna be together?
We can do it together.
We'll do a college award and an NFL award for each one. So
of course.
So that'll do it from us. From here at Tobacco Road and Abroad. So see you next week. Thank you for listening in. Good night.